Time Sync is the weekly podcast to let you know what's worth sinking your time into. Head to timesyncpod.com for more information like our rating scale, show notes, social media, videos, and more. Welcome to Time Sync, the weekly podcast where we ask if it's worth your time from TV, movies, video games, and more. We rate content not on its quality, but if it's worth sinking your limited free time into on a scale of 1 to 5. 5, put it at the top of your list. 1, it's not worth your time. I'm your host and pop culture super junkie Sauce, and this week I'm joined by Humdog himself, Mr. Hummer.
I'm sorry, guys. I have no documentaries for you this week.
What?
Or musicals, for that matter.
What?
All right, you're off of the show. And the one, Brad.
Oh, yeah, I forgot I typed the 1. I'm stupid.
We got a great episode for you guys this week. This week, we're going to talk about retro gaming, the United States versus Billie Holiday, and Marvel Wastelanders Old Man Star-Lord. So stick around, we got a great episode for you. So I wanted to talk to you guys about something near and dear to my heart, and that's retro gaming.
I thought you were going to say your children.
Uh-oh. This came before them.
They're number 2?
When I do their intro, they'll be the 2. But yeah, retro gaming. My dad, when I was 3 years old, bought me a Nintendo Entertainment System, and that's where it all got started. Ever since then, I've been playing video games, which he, I'm sure, very much regrets. But anyway.
Son, you want to go fishing? Yeah, there's a video game for that.
No, Dad, I'll just stay here and make out with my Marilyn Monroe bot.
So I wanted to tell you, the people out there, and you guys, but mostly our listeners, how you can get into retro gaming and that it is something worth sinking your time into. So this is specifically for old school games, Nintendo games, Game Boy games, Super Nintendo, Genesis, even arcade games. There's lots of ways you can play these days, and I'm going to let you guys know the best way. So if you want, you can if you can have a Switch. If you already have a Switch, great. Nintendo makes you pay $20 a month for online, but they give you some NES games and SNES games that you can play. And you can pay for some of the other games. Like a lot of companies do collections, like Mega Man will do a collection of their games and Castlevania and stuff like that. That's the most expensive route, probably. But you're limited to Nintendo stuff. You can buy the old systems, which is really fun. I like looking on Facebook Marketplace and seeing like who's selling like an old Game Boy Advance or Game Boy SP and checking out what old Game Boy games are for sale to add to my collection. And you can go to like some of your local stores and try to find old Nintendo carts and Genesis carts. And that can be fun too, but also that can get very expensive. Like specifically, I was looking for a game the other day, and I can only find it for like $150 on eBay. So that's actually the more expensive route. But now, because of computers, you can get ROMs, which is legally questionable. I think the rule is if you own the game, you're allowed to have the ROM. I'm not here to discuss the legality of it. I'm just saying it's possible to download ROMs online. It's also possible to murder people, but, you know, I'm not condoning it.
Sounds like you are.
Why did you even bring that up?
Just as an example.
What the fuck, man? What's wrong with you, you sociopath?
Because that was the first crime that popped into my head.
That's not good. You could have
Yes,
you could have said steal a candy bar. That's illegal too. And way less dangerous.
Yeah.
And I've also done it. And I've never murdered anyone, but I've stolen a few candy bars in my day.
Who knows? Maybe that income led to... You know what? Never mind. Anyway, you can download emulators and you can play on your computer, and you can buy 8-Bit Do. The company 8-Bit Do makes some really good controllers that you can plug in or play wirelessly from your computer. and play all those old school games. You can even do it if you have an Android device. You can do it from there. It's not my favorite way to do it. You can build a RetroPie computer specifically as like an emulation station, and you can plug that into your TV and use one of those wireless controllers, or you can even use an Xbox or PlayStation controller, and you can have every single retro game ever made, plug it into your TV. It's about the size of a computer mouse. Take it with you wherever you go. That's pretty cool too. I have one of those, but I don't use it as much. But the best thing to do, in my opinion, is you can now buy little handheld emulators that are like they're made in China, but they have come a long way. It used to be the case where like you would buy them and they would run really crappy. They couldn't play NES games barely, and they definitely weren't worth it. But now you can buy a handheld emulator that basically is like a small Switch or a redesigned Game Boy style where you can play every game on there flawlessly. And if you're thinking about playing some of these retro games of your past, that's the way to do it. I recommend the RG351P. You could buy it on Amazon. It's like $100, but you can download through Wi-Fi and put everything on there. Totally perfect, small pocket size, almost about the size of a Game Boy Advance. Take it with you everywhere. One of the reasons that I really was like looking for something like that is because I was on the plane recently and I wanted to play Super Metroid and I couldn't because you have to be online to be actually able to play it on the Switch. So having something like that, way better. I'm having a lot of fun with mine. I loaded it up with all my favorite old school Earthworm Jim, Sonic and Knuckles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all the Pokemons are on there, and it's great. If you're looking for something to play on, I highly, highly recommend getting the RG351P. It actually comes with all those games loaded onto it already, so you don't have to worry about looking for ROMs or downloading ROMs. They sell them on Amazon. Super cool. Do you guys play any retro games at all?
Not anymore. No. I did when they were the new games.
I have a Nintendo 64 still with a pretty sizable collection of games, but as of right now, it's being stored in a cool, dark, dry storage unit.
See,
how very descriptive of you.
That's why it's nice to have them all in one place. Oh, and I forgot to mention another thing that you could do is, which I thought was really cool. You can you can mod like an old Xbox or like an old Nintendo DS and load them all up with games that way too. I had to buy the Legend of Zelda like special edition 3DS because it looks so cool, and I modded it. But it's just not ergonomic for like an adult with big hands like me. That's why I recommend the RG351P or the RG351M or the RG351V. They're great for your hands. They fit comfortably. It holds everything, runs well, nice big screen. If you're a big old nerd and care about this stuff, definitely talk to me. We could talk about it more. Clearly you guys aren't interested, but I wanted to share that with people because, man, these old school games just, every time I play them, it puts a smile on my face because it just takes me back. I love it.
My definition of like the old school game that I still play every once in a while would be Battlefield 1943.
And that came out 2 years ago?
Well, it was originally a PC game back in like 2009, 8, 9? Might have been even earlier than that. Might have been like 2006. And then they converted it over to an Xbox 360 version that still is live today on Xbox Live. You can play it. I don't know if you have to pay for it still, but you can buy it. Graphics are awful. Kind of hurts after a while starting playing it, but I threw a lot of hours into that game.
It's actually, I wanted to ask you, what was like your favorite game or games when you were younger? Your old school games.
I had a Sega. See, Sega was our go-to in the family, so we played all the Sonic. I think it was Sonic and Knuckles, and you had the cartridge that had the adapter that you could flip open. That was probably one of the bigger go-tos, and then we would actually play the Risk. Instead of playing it on the board game, we played it on the Sega. And I remember how we got the Sega. It was off of, this is back, I guess, when consoles didn't cost that much. No one cared about Sega. And Captain Crunch was doing this like thing. If you got enough of the UPCs from the box, you could send it in, and they would send you a Sega Genesis. So that's how I got my Sega Genesis, was by eating Captain Crunch.
That's awesome.
Man, cereal used to be worth something.
I can totally respect playing the board game on the Sega. Been many nights where me and Brad in college would get very drunk and load up the Nintendo version of Family Feud from the 80s and play that. Although that's not a board game, but same idea.
And
Monopoly.
And we were very problematic with family names.
I didn't want to get into that.
It was a different time, man.
It was the early 2000s. Obama wasn't president yet. Yeah, that's right.
All right, so here, Battlefield 1942 was the predecessor to 43, which was the Xbox version. 1942 came out in 2002.
Okay. Still don't count as a retro game, but that's
so
bad.
My family was a Nintendo family with the old Nintendo and Super Nintendo. So I logged many hours in games like Super Mario Brothers and Star Fox, and many hours in a game called Mario Paint.
Oh, you had Mario
Paint?
Paint. You were such a rich kid.
Mario Paint was probably the first time I ever tried arranging music, because that was something you could do in that game, was create music with Super Mario sounds. And it was always funny to try to make up like songs that you knew, but using like the dumb Mario MIDI sound effects. Super fun. And there was a dumbass fly swatter game that was hard as hell, but fun as hell. And then I also logged many hours in a game called Looney Tunes Basketball. Come at me, bro. I will take you down as Marvin the Martian in Looney Tunes Basketball. Call it all challengers right now.
Kaboom!
Yes.
There's supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
I feel like one of the best parts about the retro gaming aspect, though, like as a kid looking back on it, is I remember like the consoles didn't feel as fragile. I would take our Nintendo 64 and we would go over to someone else's house and we would have like multiple TVs.
And play catch with it.
Yeah, play catch. But we would basically it was obviously before LAN, so you couldn't do like LAN parties like that. That happened with the Xbox. We would bring that over. We would hook them up, via Ethernet cable and have a LAN party with them. But we would bring over the Xbox and basically make like a tournament out of it. So we had a big screen TV. My friend had like one of those big, hunking like 64-inch big screen TVs. Hook up the Xbox or the Nintendo 64 up to it. But then they had like a tiny, like 24-inch or 20-inch TV or whatever in the bar. And so like you would have 4 people playing on that tiny thing, and the winner from that TV got to go to the big TV, and the loser from the big TV got sent down to the small TV, and it was just like the whole system of relegation inside.
Classic relegation. Americans don't understand relegation. It's a very European thing in European sports.
Oh, that was so fun though. You would just take your console over to your buddies' houses and do that, and then like the Xbox, when that came out, we would bring like LAN parties. We literally would throw LAN parties and just play Halo like that. It was one of the greatest things in the world, is being like 8 people playing together in the same room. Like online gaming is obviously fun. It's fantastic. But there was something about before it went full internet where like you were hooking up your console in the same room in order to play quote unquote online.
I'll never forget my first LAN party.
Let's be real. The best part was giving your friend the janky guest controller and being like, beat me. Go ahead. Try. And then
Loser has to play with that controller. That's the rules.
You're the guest, man. You get to play with this cool controller. It's got extra buttons that don't do anything. The grip is really weird. Your hands are going to get extra sweaty for some reason. Nobody knows why.
My favorite would be to play when you're playing teams, and you would just turn off the radars too, and there was like definitely no screen watching going on, or if you were like playing
Nobody ever
1v1.
screen watched. You could trust everyone.
That's why we started doing the so it starts talking crap, and we always do like, all right, we're gonna play 1v1 through the LAN. So you have to have separate TVs. Turn off the radar. Yet someone's always looking over their shoulder. Where's he at? Where's he at?
Good times. See, I knew you guys would love this segment. Although those games are a little more outside of the retro gaming sphere. I do want to mention I had a Genesis growing up, and my go-to games were also Hummers, Sonic and Knuckles, but you plug Sonic 3 into it, and that's the best version. I probably played that more than anything. That and Earthworm Jim. Those were my jams.
Dude, I think there was the Winter Olympics. There was a Winter Olympics video game on there that was freaking awesome as well. There was this one mode where you would do like basically cross country skiing, and you had to perfectly time your button presses to make your character go faster. It wasn't just button mashing, but then you would show up and you'd have to basically be doing like sniper scoping, but you couldn't control where the actual like the sway of the gun is, so you just had to get like lucky to hit it. Oh, so much fun.
I also accept Brad's Tiny Toons basketball challenge, and I would like to play him. I have it on the RetroPie so we could play, and maybe we'll stream that or something.
It's on like a character who's not in the game called Donkey Kong.
I hated
I wouldn't
that.
be. I don't feel like I would. I don't feel like I would mess with Brad on that. I just feel like he's a heavy favorite in this one.
Challenge accepted.
All right, we're accepting bets, online betting. We're gonna start. Sausage odds are plus 4,000.
Actually, that's a good point. If you want a retro game with your friends, a Raspberry Pi is the way to go. Build your own little console that you can hook up to your TV. But if you're looking to play it's just something by yourself, pick up a handheld emulator. Again, I'll put it in the show notes, but a link to the RG 351P. That thing's awesome. I love it.
I'm more of a banana cream pie guy myself.
Damn it. All right, Hummer. You don't have a musical and you don't have a documentary, so now I don't know what to think right now. So what's up with the United States versus Billie Holiday?
I mean, it sounds like it should be a documentary, right?
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's basically what do you call them? Like, I'm trying to think. There should be 1,000 movies that should come to mind like this. It's basically a movie that's based off true events, and they try to stay as true to it as you can until you have to get Hollywood about it. Basically, it's following the career of Billie Holiday, who was a African-American jazz singer throughout the late 20s, going into the early or the 30s and 40s till ultimately she passed away, I believe, in in the late 1950s. But throughout her career, basically, she had a controversial song called "Strange Fruit" that she sang. That was basically a very graphic depiction of what a lynching was like. And in New York City, they had a very weird way of silencing people that they didn't want singing songs like that, or just people who were being crude. Like Lenny Bruce is a good example. If anybody's watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, there's a scene in there where the police rush in because he's using a bunch of curse words on stage, and the police come and they pull him off and they arrest him, and they do this several times. Well, Billie Holiday had that treatment done to her several times, and they also do they have a cabaret license that they take away. So the show is basically chronicling her career and how openly corrupt the police in New York City were when it came to treating her, where it was like basically caught that they were planting drugs on her at one point. After she had recovered, she was a drug addict. She recovered. She was doing well, but they had to find something to get her off stage. It's just an eye-opening portrayal of probably someone who had the worst out of all the performers, African-American performers who've had this story, happen to them. What they did to her was just absolutely, it's a travesty, because even on her deathbed, they tried to plant drugs on her. They had her. No, they tried to plant drugs on her to the point where she was handcuffed in a hospital bed when she was dying. at like literally was dying of like liver failure. So I mean, it's a sad story. The movie itself is okay. I've seen better biographical, I guess, was it a biopic? Is that what you call this?
Biopic?
You know, there's definitely better ones, but I think this is entertaining. I'd give it, you know, a 3. If you are looking for something new to watch, this is a new movie. It's released on Hulu, you know, made here in 2021 or released in 2021. The cast is, you know, okay. I'm not sure if the lead, Andra Day, who's portraying Billie Holiday, I'm not sure if it's really her singing or not. If it is, she's actually phenomenal. The voice, if it's actually her voice they're portraying and not just playing Billie Holiday as a subtrack under it, you know, she's really good in the movie. But, you know, luckily we don't have to go and spend too much. You don't have to go spend money at the theater for it. So if it's worth your time, if you have something to do, you're looking for a movie, put it on. It's worth it.
I have 2 comments. One, it's good to know the police have changed since the 20s. And 2, was it good drugs, though? Because, like, if it was that good, like...
I mean, it wasn't... No, I mean, they were... She
I'm
admits
just shaking my head right now.
She admits to, like, in the movie, they portray her as admitting, like, you know, she had a drug problem, you know, like...
Don't we all?
It was out in the open
No.
that it was...
We don't.
It was heroin is what she struggled with.
Well, we don't fuck around with that.
And then later on, it was heroin mixed with alcoholism.
This podcast does not approve of heroin usage.
So I don't know if this is a testament to like the systemic racism in the education system, or if it's just my lack of interest in American history or history in general. But do you guys feel like in the last 5 years, thanks to media, movies, and television shows, that you're finding out about all these injustices done towards black people that you never knew about?
I think it's tough to say. Like, I definitely feel like maybe you didn't know as many individual stories because they are being more produced right now. But I think if you didn't, like, weren't acutely aware, then you were really just ignorant, in a sense.
Well, I didn't know about Black Tuesday or Black Wall Street until they talked about it in Watchmen.
Sure.
Judas and the Black Messiah, I didn't know about any of... I mean, I know, like, obviously, Black Panthers, you know, were getting their fair share of, you know, shit, but like, nothing specific. And I didn't know about Juneteenth. That's new to me.
Sure.
So,
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Like, it's definitely systemic. You know, like, we don't learn that. They didn't teach us that stuff in school. It's not just, you know, black people too. It's also Native Americans. You know, the only tragedy we were ever really taught in school about the Native Americans was the Trail of Tears, and it was a very lightly touched subject. But,
also the country we took from them.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry, that you took from us.
I wasn't there, man. I didn't do it. My people immigrated later, man.
Hey, possession is 9/10 of the law.
God damn it.
It's also 9/10 of these nuts.
Boo.
No, I get what you're saying, Sauce. Like, there is a lot of stuff that you didn't really know about, and like, yes, there is this like, I don't want to say it's like a vague veil. Like, you watch movies when we're younger, like Remember the Titans, right? And that's you know, touching on the subject of racism and touching on it and how how a football team was forced to come together over, you know, during integration when they're trying to overcome segregation. But we never really like see these stories that were confronting the actual horrificness that took place. You know, I think one of the first movies that kind of opened my eyes to the horrificness of it was 10 Years. I think it's called 10 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave.
Or 12, yeah, 12 Years a Slave. And that's one of the first times you actually get like a graphic, you know, visual depiction of how awful slavery really was. Yeah.
But that's nothing
movies,
like...
It's not new, and you know it happened, but it's like, I'm just saying, it's like you're getting these visuals now. You're getting the stories telling being told. And that is powerful because it makes you aware of this stuff. And it's just like movies like this. Yes, this happens. We know that cops plant. Not every cop. I don't want to indict every single cop, but we know that there are cops out there who've been caught planting drugs on people. It's not a new story, but seeing it playing out and seeing how it affects someone's life, the way it did hers in particular, and just how they just treated her differently because she was black. And so when you see these stories, I think you are right. In the last 5 years, it's been coming to the forefront, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. It is good.
I think there's a little bit of a change too, and I hope it continues to progress, where like in American history, eventually somebody could admit that they were wrong or they wronged somebody, but then eventually it's just kind of like swept under. Like right now with cancel culture, they're using it to like, instead of continuing to teach all these wrong things that American society has done to, people of color and, underprivileged and all these other things, they're like just trying to walk away from that and pretend like it never happened, which is the part of the systemic problem when you really get into it. Like teaching people that stuff happened and that it was wrong is how we grow and continue to learn and be better, instead of just being like, we don't really talk about that. That's Benjamin. We don't really talk about him in the family. I just think that's as big a part of the problem. And like cancel culture is kind of being used to help push that idea. And I really hate that personally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like, okay, so Louis C.K., he got canceled, right?
Right.
But all of his material is still hilarious. So am I not supposed to listen to it and enjoy it, or like? I
mean, remixing to the Ignition is a great song. Am I not supposed to like it? Trapped in the Closet was a gem. Not for the reasons R. Kelly thought it was, but because it's hysterical comedy, us laughing at somebody who thinks he's taking himself seriously. I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't great. I will identify he's a terrible person. And the way he treats women and children is very wrong. But, most fucked up people make some of the best art. It's just...
I think some people should be canceled, but like,
yeah, I
don't
agree.
think James Gunn, I don't think he needed to be canceled for some jokes he made, when a
10
while
years ago.
It's not like yeah, go ahead.
Kevin Hart shouldn't have lost the Oscar bid because of a tweet from 10 years ago about a homophobic joke. Like, the joke was wrong. He could admit to that. That's called growth.
Yeah, but if someone's like just a terrible person, like spouting terrible things and propagating like a hate speech, like, yeah, they should be canceled.
Agreed. Hate
and that's why Homer's not on this show anymore.
Click.
Hey.
Gone.
Boo.
But yeah, I feel like it sounded like you said something else.
I definitely didn't say that.
Can we go back? Can we rewind the tape?
Rewind the tape. I said negativity. Please cut all of that.
Not a good time to have your audio cut out.
So I feel obligated to watch something like this, the United States versus Billie Holiday, because of my lack of knowing, or at least growing up learning about this stuff.
That's fair. We got real deep in this segment.
Good. Just we're all over the place.
We're stirring the conversation.
We're talking about, shit you guys don't care about when I'm talking about video games, talking about relevant stuff. Brad's dropping the N-bombs. We're all over the place.
Don't you put that evil on me. I'm talking about crazy cool medallions.
Anything else you want to mention about the movie, Hummer?
It's one of those movies where as you're watching it, you will hop on Wikipedia, guaranteed.
Can you just watch like a stupid action movie one of these weeks or something?
For once?
Stop growing as a person.
You know what's coming next? Fast and Furious 9.
Perfect.
It's a 5. Don't care how good or bad it is. It's a 5.
I've never seen any of those movies.
Jesus.
But now that they're so ridiculous now, I kind of want to. Like, I never cared about fast cars, but now I see cars driving through skyscrapers and shit, and I'm like, well I can get behind that.
You still haven't even watched Top Gun, so...
Do you remember when Shia LaBeouf live streamed himself watching his own movies? I think you should live stream yourself watching the entire Fast and the Furious catalog. Not the movie, just you watching the movies. Just back to back to back. No sleep, no rest for the wicked. Just all 10 movies, because by the time you finish 9, 10 will have come out.
You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. Because I'd like to be more engaged with Twitter, I'm going to live stream. I'm not going to live stream, but I'll live tweet me watching the movies for you, Brad.
Yes. And I will not pay attention to your Twitter page.
Can we get you to live tweet?
I mean, from
watching...
from the TimeSync page.
Oh, okay. Then I'll give a modicum of attention.
You won't look. It's fine.
I think we
like
should go. I think we should be going through and picking some like other classic movies from our childhood and have you live tweet your children's reaction.
So far that's turned out terribly.
Yeah, they're not feeling it.
Dude, it would have been hysterical though. Like, we're sitting down, popcorn's ready. They're excited, can't keep them quiet.
Who the fuck are these
The mood has drastically changed 5 minutes into the movie. New plan. We're now at the park.
Yep, that's it. This is what it's going to be every time.
We're at the library.
Library's dope. Dope for kids. They do cool stuff for kids. Anyway, okay.
It's drugs for kids?
Yes. Okay, Bradley. I've actually been waiting to hear about Marvel Wastelanders Old Man Star-Lord because I'm very intrigued by the concept, but I still haven't gotten around to checking it out.
Yeah, man, as you should be, because the concept is cool. It's basically the idea of bringing back scripted radio plays, but done under this Marvel lore. And this one, Old Man Star-Lord, it's kind of coming off the heels of one that did pretty well following Wolverine, which I didn't listen. I had just found out about this one through some targeted advertising on some social media site. I don't know which one. Might have been YouTube. I don't care. But so basically Marvel's been putting out scripted podcast versions of different Marvel storylines. I assume that these old man storylines are already in existence and they're being adapted into this podcast format. What's really cool, man, is the cast. They have brought in some really awesome people to take part in this. Their names you might recognize, but you might not be able to put a face to them. This one I've been listening to about 3 or 4 episodes in right now. And I think that's all that's really out right now. They're releasing them weekly, and it's being produced by SiriusXM. So I imagine you probably get to listen to an ad-free version if you have SiriusXM's platform. But otherwise, you're listening to it on any podcast or streaming platform. You can find it pretty easily. But this cast list, man, it's led by Timothy Busfeld and Chris Elliott, who are starring as Old Man Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon. And you're also getting Vanessa Williams, Danny Glover. Who else did I see? I don't know that name. Patrick Page. I already said Vanessa Williams. But yeah, it's really cool conceptually because I love the idea of radio plays making a comeback. They've run into a problem, in my opinion, though. And it's a problem that you don't see in Dungeons and Dragons podcasts where action is such an integral part of superhero storylines. Like, as much as you really crave these great storylines that you're seeing in the MCU, I mean, part of the reason you're watching are for the dope action sequences. And it's something you just can't reproduce in a talking format like this. Now, there are ways you could try to get around it. Like, they could, have a narrator kind of just audiobook that stuff. But then you're basically listening to an audiobook at that point. You're not even listening to a podcast. So there are lots of... It's got problems. It's not perfect. But I like the intent behind it, and I could see lots of good things going forward, especially because they're already on par to make more of these. They've cast Susan Sarandon to do one as old Wastelanders for Natasha Romanoff. And I saw somebody else doing Hawkeye, but I already forget. So, like, I definitely think it's something to keep on your radar. Maybe I'll give it a 2 or a 3. But I love the idea of radio plays making a comeback. It's a really fun entertainment. I just think there's a problem with action-based storylines like this, and that stuff really thrives with, like, murder mystery and horror and that kind of stuff where radio plays from the 40s and 50s or whatever really shined. But yeah, so I mean, there's good things about it, but there's too many bad things about it as well, in my opinion, right now.
So going to what you said about the action, because I've been binging audiobooks lately. I'm probably like, I don't know, 7 Warhammer books deep right now. They make really good audiobooks because the narrator is such an amazing voice actor that he can do every character in the book. They all have different accents. They all sound like different people, even the men and the women. He nails it. And they are very action heavy books, extremely, like, the majority's action, but it's done very well and I love it. But it's narrated. So is this just because they have to act it out? Like, there's no narration, or what is it?
So they tend to fade out of action sequences using sound effects, and then they'll fade back into more dialogue-heavy story situations later on. The story is told, this one at least, is told from the viewpoint of a character called Cora, and she's a Rigelian, like, recorder, I think they call her. So it's like the story is kind of being told through the viewpoint of an android's recording of what's happening. So, like, it's really interesting, and they have, like, the dialogue scenes and sequences are great. And like I said, they're having these really cool voiceover casts that crush. But when it comes to superhero storylines, you still need that action. Like in the first episode, they're kind of like in this dialogue heavy sequence, and they're about to get attacked, and right when they get attacked you hear some laser blasts, and then it fades out, goes to commercial, comes back in, they're out of danger. Like, it really missed that part of the story in how they got through that fight and that battle. Like, it's really important, in my opinion, to something like a superhero story. You know, you kind of crave that action sequence, those really cool moments. And that's not to hurt how cool the dialogue sequences are, and, you know, seeing your characters you know or like be portrayed through an interesting storyline. But for something that's supposed to be really action heavy, I mean, you think of graphic novels, they don't just call them novels, they're graphic novels. You have panels that are dedicated to action sequences mostly, that are, you know, visualizing combat and all these sequences, so you have like visual representation of it. So I think that's just kind of what they're missing in these podcast versions of these Marvel storylines. But like I said, there is good to it. So it's definitely something worth keeping on your radar. Somebody just has to solve that problem. And that problem doesn't exist in Dungeons & Dragons podcast, because they have dice rolls to determine outcomes, and then they get to self-narrate their moments based on these outcomes, and they don't run into that problem. But that's how you solve that in Dungeons & Dragons. You can't superimpose that onto a scripted story that they're getting from these radio shows, basically. I don't have the answer, but there has to be one in order to make these great.
I just see you saying that for, like, anytime somebody's asking, like, something terrible happens and that you did, and you're just like, I don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer, but there is one.
But there is one.
Someday, someone will find it. Not me, but someone.
So these are podcasts.
Yeah, they're definitely podcasts. You can find them on any podcast format. I listen to mine on my Apple Podcasts. They release weekly. Right now they're being presented by SiriusXM, like I said. Or that's who's producing them, behind Marvel. And they have the first one they did, I guess, was about Logan and Wolverine. I did not even know that one was existing, but they literally said that it was really popular, which is why they're continuing to do it through these Marvel Wastelanders stories. And like I said, I know these stories have to exist because we're also seeing the Wastelanders storyline play out in the Marvel's Avengers video game, where they're doing Old Man Hawkeye, and you saw the older version of Hulk and whatever in that game. Spoiler. But, so like that story has to exist, and it's a cool story. I mean, it's post-apocalypse. Dr. Doom controls a big region of the United States. One of the early visuals they talk about when they come back to Earth in this podcast was seeing the Mount Rushmore, but they were all Dr. Doom's face instead of the president's. Instead of destroyed Native American features, they with white people, it was all Dr. Doom. I wanted to take it back to the mistreatment of Native Americans, apparently. It all comes back to that.
The Old Man Logan universe is like a canonical Marvel universe that started with the graphic novel, which is really good, and everyone should definitely read Old Man Logan, which they turned it into the movie Logan, or like a lot of elements from it, but it's not anywhere close to what this is, because the premise is all the heroes lost, and it's 30, 40 years in the future where all the supervillains have won and taken over the United States, and then they started doing spin-offs of Old Man Hawkeye and all these other ones. So this is the first I've heard of the Old Man Star-Lord version or part, so I'm very interested. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, like I said, it's not bad. It's just you feel it's missing something as you're listening, and that is those big action sequences. They're missing.
But you don't get enough of that. You don't have it in your head. How many times have you, through video games and movies, seen those action sequences?
I'm just telling you, man. Go ahead and listen to it, and I'm just telling you it's missing.
I'm in. I'll watch it.
Listen.
By watching, I mean listen.
Hummer always says he's in, but I don't know if he ever actually watches it, or he never tells us.
He's never been in his entire life.
I generally, there's a lot of the recommendations I check out with Brad's especially, but I'm on the road a lot more now with work, and podcasting is where I check a lot of the. That's where I podcast basically, is when I'm in the car. Yeah, so
me too.
Had I known about this last week, I would have had 6 hours in the car this week to just power through it. Actually, 12 hours in the car just to power through some of these stories. So, no, it's definitely good getting some podcast recommendations out there because
Dungeons and Daddies, bro.
I've listened to at least 2 episodes of Dungeons and Daddy, but I don't have a yard to cut anymore, so I haven't listened to any in a while.
Sauce, are you caught up on Dungeons and Daddies? Did you listen to the Goblins episode?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my god. There was something so interesting that they talked about in that episode with the idea of improv drama that threw me. Because as somebody who's lived in improv and loves improv, I've never really thought about doing improv drama. And I was so intrigued by that. So
we should start another podcast.
What?
An improv drama podcast.
An improv drama.
And we'll call it Middle Ditch and Schwartz.
I think we'd run into some legal issues with that. Some dramatic legal issues.
Just a couple. Just a couple. I did want to jump off early here. When we're recording, it's late for us. But before we jump off, I just want to ask you guys, what are you playing right now?
With my wiener.
My wiener.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew that. But what video games are you playing?
We
right
can
now?
all see that.
I'm playing Marvel's Avengers.
Still playing that.
I also picked back up Valhalla on the Xbox, and I feel like a updated review's coming because I'm actually starting to enjoy it a lot more. The story's getting pretty good. The game mechanics seems like they made some subtle little changes, so it runs a little more fluid on the Xbox. So I am starting to enjoy that. And then Apex. I've been playing a lot of Apex.
How about you, Brad?
I've been playing a lot of 8-packs, too. Drinking 8-packs.
The new 6-pack.
8-pack is the new sixer.
It's embarrassing, but I cannot stop playing MLB The Show. I'm playing so much baseball. It is ridiculous. It's so dumb, but I can't get enough. I'm also still
After your scathing review.
I'm also still powering through Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I recently saw some news on Dragon Age 4, so that gave me the itch, and I started a new game of Inquisition. Really, man, I feel like we're just waiting, because I think July is going to be a big month for TV shows and video games. I know with next month we have the new season of Thank You for Leaving. We have the new season of Ted Lasso. There's a lot of stuff coming up that I'm pretty excited for.
Well, we got Loki and Rick and Morty right now, which are both 5s.
Yeah, that full episode of Rick and Morty was on YouTube, I found, was the first streaming service that you could watch it on. Real weird.
It's because ads, marketing, they know everyone's going to watch it. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to watch ads because of your YouTube Premium.
You're welcome. And I am playing Super Metroid because I'm excited for Metroid Dread coming out. And Super Metroid is still one of the best retro games of all time. It still holds up. It's very fun. Go get a RG351P and play Super Metroid. That's my recommendation. And that's all we got time for you guys this week. Thanks for sticking around. If you like this episode, go ahead and check us out on the app that you're listening to. Leave us a review. Help us waste other people's time for an hour. And you can head to timesyncpod.com for all of our social media links. And we'll see you guys next week.
Till Valhalla.
Hummer, put your penis away. I'm not sitting here in my underwear, I promise.
That's fine, I am.